My apologies.
Hi, welcome to the January 25th, 2023 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. My name is Heather Highmark and I'm the chair, and pursuant to the Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 in accordance with the mayor's order, this meeting will be recorded, and Roberta Cameron, the CPA manager, will now call the roll call.
I see Dick.
Yes, I'm here.
Heather.
Here.
Jahan.
Yes, here.
Laura.
Present.
Rose.
Here.
And I think we're missing David Turin and Tatiana Shannon. Did I miss anyone else who's here? All right. First on the agenda is public comment. I believe that everyone who's here, there's a large crowd tonight of panelists, and we're all invited panelists with specific agenda items, and I see no members of the public attending. So we'll move to the second agenda item is update of CPA funding availability. I changed my mind in the placement of where I put this in the agenda. I will introduce this when we speak about the funding recommendations later in the agenda. So we could begin with an update on Art Farm. And I believe that we have Richard Rach from the city staff to give us a presentation about Art Farm. Rich, would you like me to show the...
It may be easier if you let me share my screen. And I can
Okay, I will do that then. I can figure out how to do that. My apologies with wrestling with...
If you right click on my name and the attendees or in the staff list, you should see something that says make presenter.
Okay. You are now the presenter.
Wonderful. I just have to make sure I share the correct screen. So you should. Great. Thank you all for inviting me tonight to give you an update on the Art Farm. I'll step through a little bit of the history and where we currently are in the project. Starting with the project evolution. And you should have this slide deck both for your minutes and for your own personal use later. This is an overall timeline of the project. I'll go step through this longer timeline in the slides that follow. The site of Art Farm was the waste transfer site in Somerville alongside McGrath. For a long time, it was operated by Waste Management. In October of 2023, the city had obtained the land, terminated the lease with Waste Management, and the waste transfer station was demolished. The vision for that site was to turn it into a pop-up arts space. Originally, the idea had like shipping containers and community gardens, sort of activated as a flexible space. There was a Somerville Arts Council Award, Mass Cultural grant of $460,000, and the CPA also awarded $1 million for the development project. In 2014, initial vision for the site began, and there were a number of guiding principles established. In 2015, a consultant was hired, and based on that visioning, initial design concepts were first developed. At this point in time, in 2015, the Arts Council and Parks and Open Space, which is now the division in the city called Public Space and Urban Forestry, or PSUF, from their acronym. They were the co-leads on the project at that point in time. At that point in time, there wasn't any known need for a stormwater pump station. In 2016, some of those initial concepts were brought to the public. There were a number of public meetings and feedback on those concepts. In that same time frame, some interim uses were activated on the site. And in 2016, that's when the concept of needing a pump station was first discovered. It is part of the overall Union Square development plan. It's important needed infrastructure to handle stormwater. As many people know or remember, Union Square is prone to flooding, and having this stormwater pump station here at this location alleviates that flooding. It's also important for all of the Union Square, and in fact, development in the a good portion of the city, because we are connected to the MWRA sewer system. Any new building or renovated building that we connect sewer to, we have to offset that sewer discharge by a 4-to-1 ratio of reducing stormwater into the MWRA system. And so this pump station, stormwater pump station, will handle and enable that development. So it's important that the site be shared. So from 2016 on, the concept that Art Farm would share the site with the stormwater pump station became a fact. And initially it was thought of as two parallel projects. The west side of the site would be reserved for the pump station, and development of Art Farm would proceed on its schedule on the east side. In this time frame, again, as the design evolved, a lot of the landscaping elements went from sort of a temporary flexible nature to more of a permanent landscaping to serve a program that was fairly well defined. And what had originally been thought of as sort of a shipping container turned into what was termed Art Barn, sort of a shell of a building. And it was that at that point, the CPA essentially the CPC last got the update on the schedule, which is why funding for the Art Farm appeared on the CPA's fiscal 19 calendar. In the same time frame, because the program became better defined and there was a building involved with it, the city management of the project shifted from Arts Council and PSUF to capital projects, with of course Arts Council and PSUF still being the major stakeholders, but in terms of design and construction management, projects shifted to capital projects. In the same time frame, a engineer was hired to design the pump station. Again, sort of thinking of it as in parallel projects. And then 2020 hit, and COVID-19 forced the city to rethink construction, its capital projects, its priorities, and what work could be completed. Along with a number of other projects and initiatives, the Art Farm design was ordered pens down and essentially paused when the pandemic hit. In contrast, the engineering team that was working on the Poplar Street pump station continued their efforts, a lot of which included hydraulic modeling, really looking at the root cause of the flooding in the greater Union Square area and the potential that the pump station proposed or could realize in solving that flooding problem. And so the design of the pump station evolved to include a very large stormwater storage tank to really leverage the maximum capacity of the pump station. As a result of that, because the Art Farm project had been paused, and we learned this other important city benefit of the pump station project, we then united the two projects into one larger project. So rather than two parallel projects on the east and west side of the site, it became one integrated site phased over time rather than geography, with the pump station happening first, and then Art Farm will be built on top of that. And so that's the concept that continued through design through 2022. And in 2022, we used a Massachusetts procurement law that is available to us, Chapter 149A, which is a construction manager type of project execution, which gives us the capability to really tackle a phased project and better manage the schedule. The management sort of shifted again, and as time progressed, we actually created what is now the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management. Capital Projects is one of the divisions in IAM, as is engineering. So it's essentially the project management stayed with the umbrella department of IAM, and we're continuing manage of it now. So that leads us to our current schedule. City Council has already authorized funding for the pump station component of the project. Because that is the first phase of it. It entails digging a very large hole to put in an underground storage tank. We're initiating the sub bids on that right now. Expect to break ground later this winter or early in the spring. It will take us at least a year to construct most of that stormwater tank, which gives us the schedule such that we will reinitiate final design of Art Farm in late 2023 and initiate construction of Art Farm in sort of mid to late 2024 in completing the entirety of the project by the end of 2025. So that's the updated schedule. We do still anticipate and appreciate the CPA funding component of the Art Farm, but the spend schedule obviously didn't happen in fiscal 19. We're now looking at fiscal 25 as the time when the CPC monies would be expended. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I guess I'll jump in with a question. So part of what we're trying to do, and one of the reasons why we asked you to come, is we have a lot of grant requests this year, and we have this money that's been sort of earmarked for Art Farm that's been sort of held aside, set aside for this whole time. So we haven't been able to apply it to other projects. And so we were looking at these things and thinking, well, is there a way that we could support other open space and recreation projects if we took some of this Art Farm money back? It's never made it all the way to City Council, so it's not a 100% approved recommendation even. It's sort of been this recommendation that has lingered on the back burner, but lives in our books and ties up funds. So what would it mean if we were to reallocate some of those funds from your perspective, away from, like, to ask Art Farm to say, okay, look, you've been on a delayed schedule, why don't you come back and reapply next year?
Through the chair, that is a potential approach. I think the other way to go about it is update when the funds are expected to be expended, which would be fiscal 25, which would free up cash flow for shorter term things. if, well, the city council hasn't accepted the CPA funds, they are aware of it, and it's on the tracking that the city portion, what would be bonded by the city for the project, is netted down by $1 million. Were the CPC to take the action of taking it off and say come back and reapply in calendar 23, we would have to take that off of the accounting. And from the city council's perspective, it would increase potentially the city share by $1 million until we're able to get a recommitment of it. You know, I don't really know one way or the other what sort of reaction the council may have to that.
Roberta?
Thank you. So a solution that we had talked about previously, and that you might consider, or perhaps Rich, you could comment on, would be right now there is an amount. Sorry, I need to refer to the document. An amount of 457,000 is to be bonded out of the million, and the remainder comes out of the current funding year. And so an alternative that we had talked about was just shifting more to the bond rather than the current year. And it would be helpful to know whether this could be an alternative. So still committing the $1 million, but just bonding more of it and providing less of it up front.
You know, I think if that's a question to me, through the chair, I think from the city council's perspective, that would be equally fine. I don't think the city council necessarily worries about the CPA's cash flow and what is cash versus bonded. I think that the bigger selling point to the council is the CPA commitment to it. So if that helps frees up money for the CPA, for the CPC to do other things in the interim, there's likely little downside to that from the city council perspective.
Thank you. I don't know, and I don't know, perhaps Arn is here. Maybe Arn has some familiarity if there was a rationale behind the amount that was meant to be bonded versus paid in the current year revenue.
No, Roberta, hi, Arn here. I don't know. I wasn't a part of the project at that time.
Okay.
But I think there is value to what both of you are saying. I think that Rich made the point that as one alternative, the CPC could consider putting forth the CPA, money at a later date. And he mentioned 2023 with the idea that the project will be getting going in 25. But it is still an unknown as to when the project really will get going. So yes, maybe it'll be 2025, but we don't know what will happen between now and then. If there were any delays, then the CPC could take that into account. So if a year from now it's determined because of whatever reason, construction delays or materials or whatever, doesn't start until 26, then the CPC could, put the money forward in 24 or 25. I don't know if that's a scenario, Rich, that you think makes sense or not.
I think what everything Arn says is valid. I think that it's fine.
Thank you. Oh, Dick, we can't hear you. Oh, it might be that I have to do the unmuting for you. Now try.
Yep, now it works. I was about to say I need you to unmute it, but of course you couldn't hear me. So I was on the CPC at the time it was done, and I don't remember exactly why the split was where it was, but it essentially reflected a balancing between the amount of cash that we had on hand, which wasn't enough for a very large project. And on the other hand, always wanting to be cautious about bonding stuff. It's basically saying, I don't have to worry about money in my wallet today because I can put it on my credit card. But of course, that then means less money that's available in out years when we have to be paying off the bonds. So it reflected a balance, but I don't remember sort of exactly why it was struck where it was. We just note in that regard, though, if we decide that we want to deal with this by freeing up some of the cash by increasing bonding, probably simpler to just do it on grants that we're awarding this year than to hard farm with a different split of what's bonded and what's cash in order to free up cash this year. So rather than increasing, if we want to go that way, rather than trying to do hard farm and increase the bonding for that, probably makes more sense to just say, we're going to increase bonding, let's just bond some of this year's projects rather than having to redo both sets of books.
I just want to make a quick suggestion. Thank you for that perspective. That's really helpful, Dick. But we arranged the agenda tonight so that we could ask all of the questions that we need to ask of our guests, and then we can deliberate on this question along with the other questions that we have going on. So if any of you have questions for the guests, I'd like to prioritize that, and then we'll come back later to continue the discussion about Art Farm.
I will give you a little bit of unsolicited advice on that front, though, being as close to construction and bonding items as I am. This year is probably a very bad year to enter into bonding. There is talk of at least one more federal interest rate hike. Everything I'm seeing indicates that they will have at least one more interest rate hike, which means that the bond market, at least for calendar 23, is going to continue to be fairly dismal. So now's a good time to use cash if you have cash, and hope for the bond markets to get better 2 to 3 years out.
Thank you.
So, but to this point, it sounds like you don't need bonds or cash until 2025. So I guess part of what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe this is more of our post discussion, but do we have a vehicle for kind of pushing off when something's going to be funded that we've already allocated, or is it really, does it not achieve our objective of freeing up the money to spend, in FY23 and FY24 if it's still, if it's still on our books the way it is?
And it depends on your term of allocation, because it was never fully ratified by city council. It sort of made it to a certain point.
I mean, I guess my point is, per this whole discussion, do we free it up for us to reallocate it elsewhere by kind of saying we're not going to need this till 2025? Does it achieve that objective, or does that not really work the way we balance our books?
Just jump in with another comment. Something else I think for the CPC to consider is to go back and look at the Art Farm application and see what it was specifically designed to do, because while the new Art Farm will be built on top of the pump station, it's not clear that the design will be the same. So if the Art Farm application was for items A, B, C, and we're only doing A and then changing the other items, then maybe it's a different application. I mean, that maybe it's just amending an application, but may want to think about that as well.
I did have another question. Maybe this is for you, Rich. I didn't quite follow the pump station stormwater connection to the project. So when you say we need to remove 4 to 1 stormwater, I'm assuming you mean separating at least 4 gallons of stormwater that's currently going into MWRA's wastewater system. And so this pump station is going to divert the appropriate gallons of stormwater from the combined system into a separate storm system. Is that
That is correct. Yeah. So what I didn't mention is that we were able to negotiate with the MBTA access to the drainage system that the T improved as part of the GLX project, which historically was nothing we could ever gain access to. And so, that is what happened in that 2016 timeframe. We successfully negotiated that capacity in the MBTA system that allows us to divert stormwater from the MWRA system into the MBTA system. And the stormwater pump station at 10 Poplar is the sort of physical connection that allows us to do that.
I see. Okay, thanks. So it's transferring it into MBTA's system.
Correct. We're going from one regional authority to the other.
Are all the permits for that transfer all confirmed? And
they are. We negotiated all that mostly in the 2016 timeframe.
But I guess still kind of going back to my initial question, and I think Arne, you raised a great point. I mean, I'm not even sure if we are being asked to approve the same project, that was approved, and funded in the past, and what additional, what that does to it.
Yeah, I mean, Arne makes a good point that it probably is worth the due diligence of double checking, but conceptually, there's been sort of design enhancements, and things have progressed to sort of a level of final design so you can construct it. But in terms of the program and the goals for the site, all of which were baked into the original CPA application, none of that has changed. So, certainly take a look. Don't take my word for it. Take a look. But I don't think you'll find any discrepancy between what is currently proposed and what had been captured in the original application.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I think is probably fine. I think it'll just come down to what exactly did we approve? How specific, are the components of the funding that were approved? It predates me, being on this. Yes,
Any other questions for Rich before we let him go?
Well, I guess the other, for me, kind of the elephant in the room is, what if we were to determine we don't have the ability to spend this money in the next 2 years the way it's currently allocated? Is the city okay coming back and with an application for funding in 2025?
If I come back in 2025, I'm going to ask for $10 million.
And we'll give you $1 million. Yeah.
I just want to be clear that ever since the CPC recommended the funds have been held so that can always be honored at any time that it is approved by City Council. So we have the resources. The question is whether the resources are better used for something that's going to happen in the more immediate future, or do we continue holding those resources until they're ready to be used for Art Farm?
Thank you, Roberta. That was put delicately.
Oh, are you muted, Rose?
I don't think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Rich, the main thing is that you have to show a commitment of fund. In order to move forward with the city council, you need to have a commitment. You need to continue to show a commitment of funds and a readiness to proceed. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. And also, we, being the city, are going to be updating the city council. I'm hoping at obviously not tomorrow, but the next meeting, the first meeting in February, on the overall citywide capital investment plan. That capital investment plan projects out the city's financial capacity to do a large number of projects across a spectrum of asset classes. We're talking paving roads, fixing sidewalks, traffic safety enhancements, other parks like 217, Somerville Ave, Dillboy, auxiliary fields, building renovations, including upgrading a number of HVAC systems in the schools, and other building improvements. The art farm is on that plan, again, with the idea that we start spending money on construction in 2024 and 2025. But that projection includes $1 million commitment from the CPA. And so
Thank you.
We'll be put in a very precarious situation if tonight the CPC removes that commitment, because we would then have to reforecast the citywide.
I'm sorry. Could somebody check their sound? There's some background noise coming from somebody.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
My apologies. What we have is one of the panelists has called in, and so we don't have any ability to put them.
Okay.
There's 4 of us.
Thanks. Another colleague is trying to.
Anyway, so the net effect is that we would have to reforecast the citywide net back in $1 million for art farm, which
Hi,
then
Bob.
puts at risk a number of other things like paving roads and building parks and repairing HVAC in the schools.
Okay.
Yeah. So from even though technically the city council hasn't acted to accept that money, all of the forecasts in the capital plan is dependent upon that $1 million not being a city liability when it hits.
So should we do, this is a question, I guess, Roberta and Heather, do you want to continue with this, or and coming up with finishing this discussion about this and what the funding plan is, or go on to other?
I think we should let those who are attending as guests, like we have the Somerville Hispanic Association members here to also answer some questions. So I'd like, people to ask their questions of the guests, and then they can stay or they can go, but we can have our deliberations after we've, heard from people who are donating their time this evening. So, are there any other questions about Art Farm?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, Rich, I thought that was a great presentation. That's the whole thing. So love to get a copy of that.
Yeah, that was very helpful. All right. So I think we can thank you very much, Rich, for preparing that presentation. And does Roberta have a copy of it if we want to pop up a slide there? Yeah.
It's in your meeting packet.
It's in our meeting packet. So So thank you very much. And I think we will then go on and have our sort of Q&A with the Somerville Hispanic Association folks. And,
Thank you.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's someone who's called into the meeting who is not on mute, and we can hear a fair amount of background noise. Can people check their microphones, please?
It's, I think when people have called in, let me see, I may be able to find instructions for how to mute and they might work. They're untested, but when you've called in by phone to go to meeting, I can't see the callers in and I can't mute them from this end. So I've texted, it's John Hecker who called in
Right.
by phone, and I texted him to let him know that that we could hear him. So I don't know if, and we're not hearing it now. So maybe he
Yeah, I think
solved the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
I left a message and I texted him as well, Roberta.
you. Yeah,
We were hearing
yeah.
the entire rehearsal.
Apologies. It's we're stuck with GoToMeeting for the moment, and this is what we get.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty good. So
He's trying to do us a favor by being available in case we have questions for him, but Lynn kindly is here. So Lynn will be able to answer the questions if John is not able to join us. So,
I think we can manage. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you to Sal, who is here to talk about the organization. And also we have Lynn Spencer from the architectural team who is also here to answer questions about the building program and scheduling and budgeting. So I shared in your meeting packets a folder which I'm going to pull up that shows an organizational profile. So committee members had asked questions at our last meeting about the organization. And so this organizational profile that Sal has put together attempts to answer all of your questions about the organization. So I'm not sure if you would like Sal to say a few words or for me to share this profile, or if you would just like to ask questions. What would you like, Heather?
Sorry, I need to find my unmute. Oh, I am unmuted. Okay, so Sal, I think if you want to kick off with any words about the organization. I think our questions, and this could be for Lynn and for Sal. So I think a lot of our questions are sort of around who's currently in the building and benefiting from the building programs, because I know there's been some changes in terms of the different organizations that are there and who's being serviced. There's some questions about the monies that were already awarded and kind of a desire to see some progress on that previous grants prior to adding more to the grant. So I guess the question would be sort of along the lines of, what does it look like to use the existing grant money that you have and demonstrate sort of capacity to manage those funds and then be awarded more funds at another time versus trying to add more funds onto an open grant that hasn't been completed. So I guess I'll sort of put those two sort of framework issues out there so that in your comments you can try to kind of touch upon those, and then we can have a general Q&A.
I'd like to pause for one moment and also I meant to introduce a colleague, Julia Melgar, who is here. She also works on programs that the city funds for the Hispanic Association for Community Development. And we thought that it would be helpful to have Julie available to help answer some of the questions as well. So feel free to step in, Julie, if you find that if it will be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
believe I just myself.
So did you have a specific question to begin with, Heather? One question?
I thought I'd put two questions out there.
Okay.
You did. So since Sal's image, the image is on the screen, perhaps we could let this is Lynn Spencer speaking. Perhaps we could start with Sal talking about the building operations and the community services that are provided from this building. So Sal, are you on?
Oh, Sal, you are muted right now. Let me see if I have to control your microphone. Okay, you should be unmuted now.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're good.
As you see the package that you have, I try to explain what we have in our organization and what kind of programs and data we have done in the last several years. Our main project is a food pantry, as we are a agency of 2290 from Greater Boston Food Bank. We have between 16 to 17,000 pounds of food every week. You have data over there around how many pounds. You have information there from 2019, 2021 of what we have done in those years. Beside the food pantry, we have different program kits and needs that we have distribution of clothes. We have a program like back to school parties, and you can see a picture of the backpack program that we give away around 500 of those backpack to the kids every year. Because the pandemic now, we didn't start yet the party again, but we have a Christmas party that we spent in the last 5 years, give away around $150,000 in toys. We have a big organization like a Toy for Tots that help us. You can see families. We have now, we have to have two party, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, because we have so many kids in the community that we have to serve them, and it's a lot of people in at one time. I mean, we decided in the last 3 years that we have to do that because COVID, we are giving away by appointment now until next year. We have a Cradle to Cradle as a partner that we give away school material. We give away clothes. For every season, we have different kind of items that we give away to them. We use the building for different activities. We have training for our staff and our community. We have meeting to support the community about the food that we give away. We teaching how to use it. We have different type of youth meeting for the community. We have a church, a Seventh-day Adventist church that meet there. You can see pictures of program that you see that they have from 6 to 9, 10 to 15, 15 to 30, etc. And you can see the picture of them working with the community in parks, giving away food, giving away support. This is a round room when we have meetings and social activity for the community. We have another room. The next one that you was showing is a conference room that we train people over there, and the chair use that room over there. It's a state-of-the-art room that we have. People use that. We use that for training our staff and have a different meeting for the community. I mean, we have several projects. We have in our building Catcher. Catcher is an organization that is a non-profit organization. Right now, they don't accept voucher because they hasn't received the approved to accept the voucher for a low income. When they accept the voucher, is because they will support low income people, but they hasn't get from the institution and the approved to do that, but they will do that. As you see, the trustee officer, we have 3 young people, no more than 4 years, that are our future of the Somerville Hispanic Association. Lourdes and me are the older one, that we have been since as a founder in the organization, supporting every people and every community around it.
Thank
You
you.
can see our profit and loss budget overview for 2023. We use a QuickBook. We have Monica, that is our QuickBook, the person that works in the accounting. Lourdes is the treasurer and CFO. We have on the treasurer that they help Lourdes too.
So I was a little confused by this, because are we talking actually about January 2022 through December 2022?
Huh? This is
I was a little confused by the
this is the
numbers being 2023.
That's the sounds like, oh, this is not the, okay, I can, that was 22, yeah, but I can send another few more of those financial statement from QuickBook that we have. I can email you that, but this is for 22.
So yeah, when we look at this, we should think of this
Yeah,
as
I know it
2022.
said 23.
Yeah.
But I can send you the 22, 19, 22. Yeah, okay. I can email you the financial statement if you need it.
Okay. Rose, do you have a question?
I do. This is great, and thank you so much for putting together this presentation. I'm just wondering if we could go back. You had a good overview of sort of the food pantry, the communities that are accessing the food pantry, and that I feel like that would be helpful to look at that again.
We have a percent of Asian people. We have Asian. We have Brazilian, Portugal. We have people from USA, Black American, white American. We have people from Europe and Hispanic community. That is a large community. I mean, we have a variety. We have a different country. I don't have the data with the countries that we do, but they are European one that goes there, and people from Middle East too. Arabic that we have lately, not much, but we are serving especially Somerville resident.
Okay, that's great. And just one other.
And if you see the picture, you can see a variety of those kind of Asian and Haitian and Latinos and things like that, and Black American people.
And just one other question. So in terms of the funding sources for the program, this is the way that you pay for operations, and I haven't looked at the financials, but I will. But you have funding sources to pay for the food pantry, and then there's also rent. Are you getting rent in from the church and from Kesher?
Well, we are not in the business of renting because we have to pay taxes, but we have been supporting non-profit organizations like Kesher and like the Seventh-day Adventists. That is a worldwide organization, over 22 or 24 million people in the all over the world, and we support them. It's very expensive to have people in the building. You know, when you flush a toilet, you are talking about 5, 6, 7 gallons of water and electricity and everything. I mean, when you have this organization, are low, they use the building and cost more money. But our main source is no renting, is a donation. We have several hundred people that donate to us. We have organizations that donate to us. You can see our webpage, and we have, like a Harapan, we have Easter Bank, we have Costa Products, and we have Rotary and several institutions, Cambridge. We have the Greater Boston Food Bank that donate to us too. I mean, we have several organizations and small businesses that make donation to us to support. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Especially the personal donation sounds small, but when you see more people, we get more money.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that I can tell you that most of the people know that we do the work in this community. We sometimes have up to 300 families that we support, and we give away every single week. We don't really tell people to come once a month or twice a month. You can see that picture. This is a small area, and you can see how many people is in our parties that we make. Yeah. We have a Thanksgiving dinner that I didn't talk about it. We bring people from different community. They bring their own cultural food. We ask them to bring that, and we share with them. We support our staff, our volunteer. We have a party. We have parties for them. We have a several training, I said before, in different way. Yeah, I already told them that.
So are the grant funds, and this may be something that I should already know, but are they held in an escrow account, or are they held in the general operating account?
General operating account. We have a grant account, that we use for the grant, specific for the grant. We have 4 different accounts.
So on the spreadsheet, I didn't see a clear item that could be identified as the sort of the grant monies that were being held.
Yeah, we have 2 different checking accounts, and one of them is for grant. And our bank is Everett Bank. Most of our account is in Everett Bank, and we have Citizen Bank. The food pantry is in Citizen Bank. The other account is Everett Bank, the one that we use for several years.
General operation and grant.
Yeah, general operation grant is one of the accounts. 2 accounts.
So the main organizations or groups that are active in the building is the Seventh-day Adventists on the first floor or the main chapel floor, the food bank downstairs in the basement, the women's shelter's gone, right, and the daycare's gone. Is there some organization that replaced them? Is that
in the second floor? We have a Ketcher preschool that is a daycare. In the first floor, we have the church, and we have the round room and the conference room in the front of the building, in the first floor front of the building. Our office is in the right side of the building. We have a headquarters, we have conference room in the right side of the building. And in the basement, we have the activities. The activities with the food pantry, the Christmas party, all the party that we made there. We have a very, very big food pantry in that area, in the back of the basement. I mean, we use the facility, for the community. We support them, and we do the best that we can.
I will continue with my questions, and then the committee can feel free to jump in after this one. So can somebody address sort of the previous grant that was awarded and where the project's at and why it's in the whatever state it's currently in? Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, Heather. Roberta, were you going to put anything on the screen for this?
Sure, I will put your narrative on the screen.
Maybe the narrative and the schedule, because I think the schedule really goes to how we're going to move this along. But let's start with the narrative.
Okay.
And this was distributed, I assume, to the committee.
Yes, the committee has both of these in the
Okay.
meeting packet.
Okay.
So I will share the screen. And sorry, I've got to rearrange things on my screen so that I can see
Sure.
it.
Okay.
So yeah, here's the narrative. And
There's the narrative. Yep. So first, let me say that hearing and experiencing the work that Sal and Lords and their board do at the former Grace Baptist Church, now the Hispanic Association for Community Development, is actually humbling. So it is important to understand that this is a hardworking building that serves hardworking people. And we are privileged to have been working with Sal and the association since 2017, beginning with the first CPC grant, Community Preservation Grant. This building was a very troubled building. There was years, decades of deferred maintenance. And so with the help of community preservation grants and Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund grants, we have been steadily working on building envelope and structural issues. In fiscal year 21, you awarded an additional $49,500 towards continuing work. And in fiscal year 22, another $494,000, which would address handicapped access to this building. So two concurrent response, very real needs. The access to the building would be accomplished basically to the lower level to begin with. And that is the level where the food pantry is very actively serving hundreds of people a week. In the future, that would be the starting and that entry and the access to that floor would be the starting point for a future elevator, which would then access the 2 floors above. So the big question is, why has there been a delay in moving forward on the $49,500 grant and the $494,000 grant? And I can simply say that it was a combination of manpower and, quite honestly, contractor availability. And the important thing is that we have now negotiated the contracts with the contractor, and we have a schedule to move forward on these 2 grants. And thank you very much, Roberta. That's the schedule. So we will be starting work on that smaller grant in April and completing it in mid-May. And then the handicapped accessibility work, which is a more complicated project, involves landscape architecture and civil engineering, is also going to be starting, will be going along concurrently in March and running basically through the summer. So that's how we plan to sort of push forward in a decisive fashion on the existing awarded grants. The design work has been done. The contracts have been agreed to with the contractors. Building permits are in process. So I hope that helps with what's out there under obligation. Now, there is additional work that we've applied for because there's continuing envelope issues. I think Roberta and her team are very aware of the fact that there's still areas of troubled masonry, troubled roofing, and troubled windows. So for fiscal year 23, the application that is in front of you, we will continue to sort of address critical building envelope issues. And could I say that this will be the end? I certainly hope so. But as those of you who may have looked at our initial application 5 years ago, when we did, you know, a fairly quick building assessment, there's nearly every area of this building needed to be addressed, including structural issues within. I hope
I just
that's
wanted
helpful.
to, I just wanted to add, clarify one thing that you just said, which is this the end? What I did ask was that you apply for everything so that we had the whole picture in the FY23 application, and that's included in this narrative that's in your meeting packet. But what I asked them to do for this meeting for us today was to highlight what are the highest priority things to take care of this year, assuming that the committee doesn't have the resources to fund the entire project. So identified are the highest priority work scope and then the remainder of the proposed work scope.
Right.
And
Right.
so hopefully this remainder covers everything, but it may not be all funded this year. And you've provided a budget for just the highest priority work scope.
That's right. So, but these are the things that are very, very pressing. They're moving from, you know, the red zone, from the rear to the red zone. Future work will be things like the entry canopies, more storm windows, more of that kind of thing. Happy to answer any further questions or any questions.
I think one thing we're trying to make sure we have enough money for is that projects that are under construction, for example, when you start to lower grade against the building to make it the accessible path, you very well may get into unforeseen conditions that would require kind of emergency funding. And so we're looking at some projects such as yours that where it's sort of like, well, could something go sideways during construction here? Well, something could. And we want to make sure that when things like that do happen, that we have money in the reserve to kind of complete the what was the intent to complete with that grant, you know. So
Yeah. I will say this, Heather, there's no extra money at the association. So what they have available for work on the building is what you provide. And Lourdes has been very clear with me, we cannot go over the grant amount. So if we run into trouble, we're either turning to you again, or we're rescoping something else and making an adjustment within the awarded capacity.
And did you mention that you had a grant from another organization from?
Yes, we've had 2 Massachusetts Preservation Projects funded grants. We've been able to use, they're small grants, $50,000 grants. So your money has matched those grants to extend, you know, work a little bit. But, you know, we don't have anything in the pipeline with them at this time.
Okay, Dick, do you have a question or anybody?
Are you able to tell us what happened about why the shelter and the daycare center are not there?
I think I will have to defer to Sal for that. Sal, are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The shelter left our building. They sent a letter to move. And the daycare center, Bellas Manitas, sounds that they bought it a property across the street and was more accessible to the people. I mean, I don't know, you know that they are across our building. I mean,
Right,
they left,
diagonally across, right?
both of
They're
them
in the-
left. Yeah, Shelter, they sent me a letter too, saying that that was the last, you know, the last month of November, over a year ago, and they left the building.
So the daycare center is now in those storefronts diagonally across from you?
They are across, yeah, they are in the corner of the Per and across the street. They have a state-of-the-art building, the remodeling building there.
And do you know where the shelter went?
I don't really know about them.
Okay.
They never let us know about it. Let me tell you, I believe with the COVID, they should usually have 1 or 2 family there. Since COVID, we saw only 1 or 2 families in that building. That's what I see every time that I go to my office. But I don't know why they decide to leave the building, because we make a contract for 5 years that they can leave anytime or we can ask them to leave. But that's not the case. The case is that they send a letter a month after we sign the contract, asking to, you know, letting know that they will live in the building. But we have been support Summer Holy Coalition for almost 16 years. I mean, we never increased the rent to them. Was in 15 years was $250 increase. I mean, we were supporting them there. And we wish that we can keep supporting, but they decide to leave the building.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Rose?
I got just one more question, just a clarification. So for the food pantry, that's on the ground floor of the building, is that right? And
yeah,
you need the elevator is important to be able to get down to the food pantry. I know we've talked about this in the past, and I'm sorry for asking again, but
in the basement is the main food pantry where we serve the people. We have a huge area and we have a setup for very clear that we do the work there. And we have our office, our headquarter office is in the 2nd floor on the right side of the building. There is a sanctuary and there is one side that we have our office over there.
So let me just jump in if I could, Rose. Clarification. The access, the ground floor, the basement level will be made accessible by foot or by wheels. The elevator would be then going up to the 1st and 2nd floor. So that's this accessible pathway for fiscal year 22 will make that food pantry fully accessible.
Okay. And the 1st and 2nd floor are that's the church and the daycare and the preschool, right?
Exactly. Church and the preschool and program space for young people on the 1st floor.
On the 1st floor, I'm sorry in the 1st floor, we have the church in the back of the building, and we have the conference and the other social area that we use in the front of the building. In the 3rd floor, we have the preschool. No, because I don't know, you was confused with the preschool that is in the 3rd floor or in the 2nd floor.
2nd floor. 2nd floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have a 3rd floor yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe never.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jahan?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to get a better sense of the new schedule. So I understand that things are going to be on a on a schedule to ensure that the work is back on the scheduled dates and targeted. The only concern that I have is to better understand whether the delay that was caused by various factors has added to the deterioration of the building or elements within the building. I'd like to better understand whether the building is has basically deteriorated further because of the delays in mobilizing the construction and the necessary repairs.
Thank you. That's a good question. To my knowledge, it hasn't advanced measurably on that cornice work, the small $49,500 grant, which was going to the cornice and the spandrel work. I think that what Roberta has kindly guided us on is to then sort of say, okay, what's really critical work that's next? And that's what this fiscal year 23 grant for continued work on the dental cornices and masonry is all about. That handicapped access project really, I think Heather actually raises a very good point. We are going to be excavating down to create an inclined ramp to the ground floor level. And, that's going to expose portions of the foundation. We scheduled some test diggings to better understand the nature of it's a stone foundation, to better understand what's going on there. But I think there's always room for unforeseen conditions and, more work to be found. And as I said, our job is going to be, quite honestly, managing the finances carefully, because we just don't have, and you don't have, extra money to be allocating without, very serious consideration.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And thank you, Madam Chair, as well.
Any other questions? Good. Okay.
Thank you so
All right.
much to
Thank you.
Val and Lynn and Julia for being here.
Thank you for considering all this work and the commitment that you've made for some years on this building.
Thank you so much.
So do you want
you.
us to continue to be available, Roberta and Madam Chairman, or what is your preference?
I think that we have the materials that you presented, and people have had a chance to ask questions. So I think you can log off, and that would be okay. Or you
I'm
can hang
happy
up.
to continue.
Okay.
I'm happy to continue because I'm walking home through the snow, so I don't know.
We have a few agenda items that we're going to cover before we come back to this discussion
Okay.
anyway.
All right. Well, I may sort of tie in later on then, Roberta, but yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening,
Right.
all. Thank you. Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for attending.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, you
Val.
too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lynn, you have the, okay, good. I assume she knows how to get back when she wants to watch the, watch as an attendee. All right, I apologize for such a packed schedule that I have to fit in a little bit of housekeeping to move us on to the annual review period, which is coming up, because in order to have our annual review survey, we need to have this translated, and I need to submit it to be translated by the beginning of February in order to have the survey running in March. So we have to think very far ahead. So I've included in the meeting packet the draft survey, which I updated from last year. And I would invite comments, suggestions, corrections to this survey, or your approval of the draft survey so that I can send it to be translated. I can share this, put this the survey on the screen and then share the screen, but I have to rearrange my screen in order to do that.
So while you do that, I guess my questions were kind of more about the optional demographic questions and whether we're able to, like, in collecting this information, are we actually able to kind of use it in a way that's meaningful to us, or are we actually collecting stuff that we don't have the capacity to kind of
That's a
sort?
great question. The reason why I collect the optional demographic data, and I collect it very specifically, I select demographic data that can be compared to the US Census. So in the FY23 Community Preservation Plan, there's an appendix that describes the results that we heard from the survey. And in those results, I compare the survey results to the census, and that gives us a sense of how representative of a sample are we getting. And that's really important to know more, who are we not hearing from when we collect this survey data. So it's really difficult to get people to respond to surveys who just aren't going to respond to surveys. We make every effort to reach people where they are. We translate it into multiple languages. We take the survey to the libraries and to community events. And still there are a lot of people who just never hear about it and who never have the opportunity to take the survey or choose not to take the survey. So the demographic questions allow us to know in what direction are our results skewed.
All right, that's a good answer. So it sounds like from your answer that there's nothing we're collecting here that we don't necessarily end up using at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Roberta, if I'm remembering right, I think we did ask the demographic questions last year as well, right?
Yes, I made a few minor updates on this
But
draft
actually,
survey.
where I was going is, do you have a sense of how many people filled it out, or what percent? You know, most people just fill it out because it's in there and they don't, you know, because going kind of following up on on the way you'd like to use it, it's only really effective if enough people fill it out that the unknown component doesn't overwhelm the known component.
Very few people didn't fill out the demographics section. If they took the survey, they took the whole survey.
So that's good.
Yeah. I did make some changes to the question about how would you distribute funds among the following categories, because this has always been a very difficult question to ask in a way that the survey takers understand it. In the past, we asked, if you had $100, how would you spend the $100 between these program areas? And now I'm just asking them straight up. The way that we're going to use it is to divide into, what is the percentage of funds that we put into each of these categories. So I'm just asking the question in that format now. I think that's probably the most significant change from last year's survey.
I think that this looks good. The only thing I might add is just add at the end of the narrative description, that the total should equal 100%.
Okay.
Instead, I mean, I like, the way you did it graphically is fine, but it might just be a little clearer if you just say it.
Okay.
Jahan?
Good. Thank you. So Roberta, I think I really like the map of the ward and the question related to the ward. The only question that I have, or the only item that I'd like to bring up is there a way to have someone find out what the ward number is based on their address? I'm not sure if this is going to be available online. If it is, then maybe like a link to like a address lookup that can connect to the ward, so that way it'll just be easier for the respondents to select
I'll
the
see
ward
if that's
number.
possible.
Thank you so much. I know I mean, I know which ward I'm in based on the geographic delineations, but I'm not sure if other respondents will be able to track back. But thank you so much.
Okay, any other suggestions or questions on the survey?
In the block where we show the, ask people to give us percentages, I would suggest, in addition to putting a line at the bottom that says 100%, to put next to each of them, put minimum of 10%, even though we've said that above.
Mhm.
And then, as somebody else indicated, below something to add up the total. And I wonder if, for purposes of this, it has any meaning to ask people about a reserve balance, which they won't understand and which seems to be contrary to all of the information above about 3 categories, minimum of 10%, and so forth. I think
That
I
is
would,
definitely the least understood part of the question,
leave
and
that off.
few people fill it out.
I actually am not sure that, yeah, I think you could strike, well, yeah, I think we could strike that. I don't even know if it's important for us to point out that it has to be at least 10%. I mean, we know that, but they don't have to know that. I mean, if they want to say, I would give none to open space if I had a choice, you know, that seems like that's information. You know, we're not going to do that, but we would know that at least that person, you know, wouldn't give them a dime.
Yeah. I think
And it
that's
also
a valid.
simplifies it a little bit, because all you're saying is divide these 3 categories into 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, but I know that completely contradicts what you were suggesting, Dick. So yeah, so I don't.
That's okay.
I don't think that is a contradiction, but I'll play around with it and maybe do exactly what you're asking. That makes sense.
Okay.
Laura has a question.
Laura?
And are
Yeah,
you
please.
muted, Laura? Oh, okay. Sorry. Now try. Try yourself.
Okay, that should work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to echo what others have said, that I think this looks good, and just I don't know, reiterate or just restate that it is hard to get folks to fill these out, and I know I appreciate what you said, Roberta, about translations and trying to get it out there, and I think we just got to double down and keep at it. Although I do I do wonder, you know, how effective it'll be, just because I know this has been tried for a while, and I'm not saying we shouldn't keep at it. It's just I'll just say that this is hard. This kind of outreach and bringing people in is tough. I find this at the school district too. Just getting a diverse group, a representative group of folks to chime in and feel comfortable chiming in and realizing that, yeah, they have a stake and a voice. This isn't easy.
Yeah. And just also to point out that this is one of the ways in which we gather input for our plan. We also look at plans prepared by other city departments, which have also gone through a public engagement process. And so the actual number of people who are being reached are multiplied by the number of other city plans that we're incorporating into our own findings. So there's yet another reason why we're not reliant only on our own, but we want to make sure that we give people the opportunity to weigh in directly to us.
Well, would the committee be comfortable approving the survey kind of with the recommended changes to the line item 5, which I would think is maybe removing the 10% minimum and just kind of asking them to divide up the money so that it equals 100. So it sounds like we are. So can I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Or Dixon second.
All right.
Thank
Dick?
you.
Do we do a roll call or yeah?
Sure. Yeah.
Dick? Jahan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay.
Thank you all. So I'm not sharing the screen. Sorry, now I have to find my way around the screen again. So back to the agenda, I'm going to pick up again the update on CPA funding availability. We have one welcome update since the previous time that I gave you an update on funding availability, which is that we received in, trying to talk and open the file at the same time. We received in early January a second tranche of state match money. And that pretty much makes up the difference of what the over budgeting was last spring. So the amount that there's in your meeting packet is a FY23 revenue update, and this is just a one-page summary. The supplemental state match was $213,000, bringing the total state match up to $1 million and change. And so I changed I won't bring up the whole report, you've seen it a couple times now, but I changed just the following 2 tables within that report. So the current year revenue, now there's only a $9,000 difference instead of a $200,000 difference that we saw the last time we looked at this. And then so that translates to the available undesignated funds are now $1.4 million, where they had been $1.2 million in the previous version of the available funds update. But just a note, prior to the supplemental state match, we needed that $222,000 from the carried over reserve balance or undesignated fund balance in order to have the flexibility to not have to draw that out of our current year's budget. And so that just is an indication of the usefulness of carrying over funds in the undesignated fund balance, whereas we were going to just write off those funds. Now those funds will stay in our account, but they're still within that kind of the portion of funding that we have to leave untouched year after year so that we can continue to have flexibility. But I just wanted to provide that update. So now the available undesignated funds is at $1.4 million. And I'm going to bring that number into I updated the project scenarios worksheet that we looked at the last time, where we created a plan for Sorry, couldn't do that the last time I opened this file. Yeah, so when we created a plan for managing the being able to fund all of the projects within the available funds. So I'm just going to go over the columns at the bottom of this spreadsheet again. So that $1.4 million is carried over undesignated funds. In the last meeting, you suggested that you would like to continue to reserve $750,000 in the undesignated fund balance for future needs, whatever they may be. And that leaves $670,000 that could potentially be available to use in this funding round if you wanted to spend down some of that undesignated fund balance. So I've plugged that $670,000 into the formula for available funds for this funding round. We had also talked about some scenario of how to handle the art farm recommendations. So I'm going to invite you, if you wish, Heather, to continue the conversation about what to do about Art Farm. And then we could perhaps resolve that question so that we know how much money is really available, so that we know how to finish voting on the project recommendations for this round.
All right. Well, do we want to start with the art farm recommendation, or do we want to start with a discussion on the Hispanic Association, Grace Baptist Church, or okay, well, let's start, since you recommended it, we can start with the art farm recommendation and see where the committee's at. Does anyone have a recommendation that they'd like to make on that front? Rose?
Before we do that, let me just note line 31, undesignated funds to hold in reserve. That was not a firm decision. That was something that we threw out.
Correct.
It's a placeholder. Yeah.
So as we're doing stuff, we should remember that that's not necessarily a fixed number, and we could decide to increase it or decrease it depending on the other decisions we make.
Yeah, I agree. Rose?
That's a good point. I just was thinking about this, the art farm. I get it that it's important for them to have this a commitment from us, and so I'm wondering if it's possible for us to make a commitment that would be based on the assumption that we would bond the entire amount, but that if and when they are, when it comes time for those funds to actually be used, if we actually have enough in our accounts, then we could switch to that. I mean, I think it's generally better to not do bonding if we've got the money in our accounts. Would that be a possibility, though, to make a commitment, but it would be committing us to a smaller, I'm assuming it's a smaller amount, because it would just be the debt service on the bonds for a year, 2 years? I don't actually know.
Probably not actually any debt service in the short term until the money is needed and then the bonds get issued. So I don't think in that.
That's my, I'm thinking that's got to be, we've got to have some placeholder for debt service for when the funds are starting to be drawn.
I don't think we do for this purpose, because that's just, those would be charges that would be baked into the budget that we would have 2 or 3 years from now about spending. We would have to say, well, we've got this much money, but we now have this much debt service that has to get covered. So I don't think
We couldn't do I thought we couldn't do a forward allocation.
Correct.
A future allocation. Is that right?
We can't commit in the future aside from bonding.
So they would have to do a new application at that point, right?
But I wonder if it could be possible to draft a recommendation letter that states we recommend bonding, we recommend the full amount which may be bonded or provided in cash, depending on the availability of funds at the time, you know, at some time in the future. I mean, I've never seen such a letter, but I wonder if it's possible to recommend it in a format that asks them to come back and review the mix of cash versus bonding at a time in the future.
Wouldn't it simplify it though if we did just say we would bond the entire amount, and then that's got to be a pretty minimal amount of debt service. And if we said, so this is, I mean, really, this is all just, this is just sort of it's our confirmation, it's the CPC's confirmation that we are thinking about. We haven't forward committed. We actually have in our accounts enough money to service a year or two of the debt. And that's our commitment to it. You know, if something happened, I don't actually know how we do that.
My personal inclination is that if we're not going to basically get back the $100,000 from Art Firm, that we're just sort of trying to do this to free up some cash this year, that it's not worth doing that for $100,000. To go to bonding would itself have to go to City Council, I think, wouldn't it, Roberta?
Yeah.
So it's not like we can just on our books change it and go on. We would have to, we couldn't spend it now because it's already committed now. We could go to City Council and ask to have it changed, and then the money would get freed up later for us to be able to spend during this fiscal year. But then we intend to spend it when Art Farm is ready anyway. It feels to me like to do this just for short-term cash flow is not worth the effort and complications.
I agree.
But conceivably, it's not just the 100. The 100,000 is what we were talking about in the abstract. I mean, conceivably, it could be the whole $1 million if we were to say, we want you guys to come back in 2024 when you need the money.
Right, but don't we have to get them to agree since we already committed it to them without a time limit?
I don't. Well, now you're waiting. Now you're over my head, and process-wise. I mean,
that was my understanding.
It's like a weird thing. I know we talked about this last month.
That even though the City Council hasn't approved it, once we've recommended it, we have to carry it unless the city comes back and says you're no longer on the hook for that. That was my understanding.
Roberta, was this one of the things you were going to look into, is whether we could put some sort of a limit, on when money has to be expended by?
We certainly can. I don't have to look into it. We can put a limit on when the money needs to be spent by. So I'm drafting, maybe throwing a condition out there to for a revised recommendation to send to City Council that includes a condition that will require them to come back every year and renew their request. Oops. CPA funds must be spent.
I'm not sure if I would want to say every year, but I would maybe say it should be spent within 3 years, or then provide, some sort of an explanation
Mhm.
as to why, I mean, and again, I want, because we don't necessarily want our time taken up with them with everyone having to come back to us every year.
And we couldn't do that for this particular one without the city agreeing, because this one, we already did with.
Yeah, this is
So this
future.
is really about future grants, but that's not about Art Farm. Am I right about that,
Well,
Roberto?
we can send, so what I have drafted is a new recommendation letter. So the city council has not, so we could send to the city council a retraction of our previous recommendation and replace it with this recommendation. And in which case we can add a condition.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
also,
not that we would be saying, I'm sorry.
No, please continue.
Okay, it's not that we would be saying we don't want to fund Art Farm. We're just saying we want Art Farm off of our books until the city is ready, so that we can then have that in cash to spend this year. Right,
Well, this solves a different problem than what. So this doesn't, the suggestion that I'm taking down from you is that we want to request that they should come back and ask for an extension if they don't spend it within 3 years. But if you want the cash flow now, we would need to have a different recommendation.
Right, but that was our goal for the 100,000, was trying to get it to use in cash this year.
Yeah.
Just before I forget, regarding your language, is spent the word we need to use, or is there kind of a more of an allocated or committed or something? Because I don't know that they necessarily have to have spent it. I think we want, and I also would defer to others, on the committee that have more experience with these, with the sort of, because I'm thinking, all right, they come to us and they ask for money, and then it takes them a year to develop a plan, and then it takes them, some number of months to go out to bid, and then it takes them, some period of time to get bids, and I mean, so I want to allow for all of that. So I'm certainly not expecting that they're spending money within months of us giving it to them. It's just what is that reasonable time frame, for a capital project?
So as a general matter of policy, I would support that. I think I would not have contemplated in the past that we would allocate money and then it would still be sitting there for a number of years. So I would support this as a matter of policy, but we got here right now talking about what are we going to do about Art Farm.
I agree. Yeah, I understand.
And we do need to figure out the answer to that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, since Roberta was typing, I wanted to,
And actually, just as a matter of language, rather than request an extension, I would say unless extended, because I think it's got to be
Thank you.
clear.
I couldn't figure out.
Yeah, and unless an extension has been granted, by the CPC.
Thank you. I couldn't come up with the words, so that sounds much better. One option that you have, obviously, is to do nothing to increase the cash flow at the moment, because you potentially have the funds that you need to be able to meet most or all of the funding requests. But the suggestion the previous time was kind of a a compromise, which was just to shift some of the money. But you said that wasn't worth the effort to shift some of the money to the bond. I mean, City Council hasn't approved anything yet, so you don't have to undo a City Council action.
But if we are committed just because we made the recommendation, then somebody has to agree with this. We can't do it unilaterally. Right?
Well, we can unilaterally rescind a recommendation or change, in this case, rescind it and submit a new recommendation.
I had thought that we were told that once we recommend it, it has to sit there unless the city agrees to give it back.
Once it's approved by City Council, then the City Council
Right.
has to approve.
Right. But since City Council hasn't acted on this, can we just unilaterally rescind the entire approval to Art Farm? So you didn't do it in time, we're taking it back. When you're ready for the money, come back and ask us?
Yes,
Yeah.
we could.
Or does the city
We
need
could.
to approve that?
Well, that would be our recommendation, and then the city would accept it or not accept it.
Yeah. But to Dick's point, that I'm not sure what that gets us. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we need the cash flow. And if it's going to put them in a bind because they then
Pro
can't go,
formas are all based on it.
yeah, it's 100. I mean, it'd be a different thing if we were talking about a bigger chunk of money, but
I think this is an interesting conversation. I actually think that it's in the abstract until we go back and we look at the projects that we'd like to fund, and any changes we'd like to make, given the additional money that that we got to match, and then figure out, well, where are you? In a perfect world, are we not able to fund things we would like to fund because it's tied up by by Art Farm?
Right.
Good point.
good point.
Let's hold this probably until the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. But let me.
Given that,
I think also going back to one of the points that came up during the conversation, which is the project has evolved quite a bit to include this pump station and all sorts of stuff, and it's not the Art Farm anymore, it's the Art Barn. It's like it's evolved a bit over the years since it was originally awarded, and so they said the program's substantially the same, but we haven't really had the opportunity to kind of reassure ourselves of like what's currently the plan versus what was kind of originally awarded. What was that award based on?
Yeah. And it really is that it's the community benefits, right? If those haven't changed substantially, then I mean, I would say it's on them to confirm that the benefits to the community haven't changed substantially. Even if the design has changed a lot, it's really our screening is more about the benefits. Right?
But
Designs will evolve,
Yeah.
My sense just from the year I've been on this committee is that we're pretty explicit about what we're funding. Not, yes, they need to have the program, they need to meet our program goals to be eligible, but then we get into the weeds about how the money is going to be used. So I do think that we need to, it seems to me, if we took a similar path with this project, there's probably specific infrastructure and buildings and structures that we said we were that they'd use the fund for. Am I wrong about that?
I think it would be worthwhile perhaps taking another look at the application. So unfortunately, that would require not making a decision about it tonight. I didn't think to put the application, the original application, in your meeting packets for tonight. I think that when I looked at it, the original application was vague enough about what the design of Art Farm was going to be that there's $1 million worth of open space, even though there's also a facility that doesn't qualify. The art barn is not eligible for CPA funds, but there's sufficient open space on the site that maybe the design or the usage of the open space might change, but it was open-ended enough in their application that I think that it could still carry over to what is being discussed right now.
Yeah, well, that would be convenient, because otherwise we probably need them to submit a new or revised plan, you know, that shows how they're reallocating, you know, the money that we're holding for them.
Yeah. That was my first assumption, was that they would need to submit a revised plan because it's evolved so much. But when I looked at the application, I felt that it was sufficiently vague, but it's, you know, you're the committee, so it's your discretion and not mine whether it still applies.
And I don't really know enough about, you know, is there anything about the open space being on top of a, you know, stormwater storage tank that affects its, you know, its eligibility? I would presume not, because we're not talking about a grassy area, right?
And I think that's not that wouldn't fall to us. I don't think we're here to critique the design or engineering, and we're relying on the appropriate city bodies to do that piece of the review.
I was just thinking to Heather's point about how much the project scope has changed and whether that does anything to its eligibility. And I'm assuming it doesn't, but I don't know.
One thing that I had noticed changed from 2019 was that in the recommendation letter, there were several funding sources listed and a budget. And I just took that out because I assume that none of that remains the same, the total budget and the funding sources listed. So in the revised recommendation letter that I put in your meeting packet, I just took out any mention of total budget for the project and additional funding sources because I didn't feel that we had enough information to fill that in for now.
Okay, so it's 8:30, and I'm wondering if there's any sort of concrete proposals about how we want to proceed with Art Farm, or if we want to actually try to approve projects that we had already sort of settled on a budget for, that we feel would be kind of easy to tick off and kind of get them going. And maybe in so doing, identify the pinch points between Art Farm and the remaining projects that are still questions in our committee's mind.
I think that's a great idea to do that, to pick off the easy ones and then to move the next, to hold off on the harder ones until next meeting.
Okay.
And you had to get a sense of whether or not that 100,000 would make a difference, you know, in the Art Farm money, because that might inform how we decide what to do about that application.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to actually have to take like a 5-minute break and I'll be right back. So I'm just going to turn off my camera and I'll be right back.
So should we just jump in here with is Elizabeth Peabody the first one?
Yeah.
If I
What
may
would I-
throw a couple more monkey wrenches in before we do that. Sorry to do that. So one of them is, before we go through the easy one, we need to think about the extent to which we've allocated money to those based on our assumptions about what other money is available. So that if we go through and pick off some of those, we then leave less money. Now, that might be an okay decision, but I want to make sure that we've at least thought of that so we don't come back and say, oh, well, maybe we wouldn't have given, say, $300,000 to Elizabeth Peabody House, given some of the other things we're thinking about. So that was one. And I'm not opposed necessarily doing that, but I want to make sure that we're recognizing that we are then limiting some other choices later on. And then the other one is I wanted to see where we are on the Adams House, because that's a lot of money, and we had allocated that based on some assumptions about the restrictions we can impose, and I wanted to see where we are on that.
With respect to the Adams Magoon House, I've been asked by the city's legal department to hold off on making a recommendation at this time. They're still looking to see how they can put restrictions on this that would be in compliance with the anti-aid amendment.
Okay.
So this may end up being a tricky project to be able to fund in the end, but we're looking to see what we can do.
If there are anti-aid amendment concerns, that would be true whether it was a grant or a loan. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's what they suggested.
I'm not saying that there's not an issue, but it's not complicated by our proposal that it would be a loan. It's the same issue in either case.
Right. If anything, the proposal for it to be a loan could mitigate the problem, but I'm not sure whether the terms can be arranged in a way that will meet both the city's needs and the applicant's needs. So I think there's some question as to whether we'll be able to make this grant, despite our best intentions too.
Okay.
So how long is it on hold for?
I hope that we'll have the answer by the next meeting, but I can't guarantee.
Because that affects things a lot.
Yes, that does.
So should we go start up at the top and just work our way through and make notes about which are the ones we're.
Yeah, some of these are definitely, I think there's a consensus about being able to fund them. So maybe you could start with the ones that you have a clear consensus on. And the first one is the Elizabeth Peabody House. So I'm going to pull up the draft recommendation for the Elizabeth Peabody House. And what you had discussed in your previous meeting was that you would support funding the full request at $300,000.
Mm-hmm. How should we move forward with this? Do we just want to do we vote on whether?
So
yeah, we should vote.
I'm not sure if you have a specific way of going about the recommendations. The way that I've done it in the past is to vote to make the recommendation and then take a second vote to approve the letter with the conditions. And I did not put, I probably should have put in conditions in all of the draft letters. So with the Elizabeth Peabody House, they already have a preservation restriction and a sign. So I don't know if you want to add any more conditions to that. So maybe that's why I didn't include any.
Well, I think we could take the first step in that and vote to approve the 300,000. And then we can vote to approve the letter. So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the 300,000?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay. I'll just go in the order that I see people on my screen. Dick,
Yes.
Jahan,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
All right. So, and I agree. I also vote yes. So, with that, the 300,000 grant is approved for Elizabeth Peabody, and now looking at the wording and the conditions of the letters, does it capture everything we want in there?
I'm just highlighting, I'm going to fill this in later when I calculate
Okay.
where the reserves are coming from.
Okay, so do we want any kind of standard condition, like any project that is not complete within 3 years? Seems like a generous amount of time. I think on this one, it could be more like 2 years, so they would have to.
My recommend, even though 3 years may be generous my recommendations is us just to kind of do single, have kind of template language and not try and figure it out for every individual project. Because again, I mean, I think of this more as a safety net for us as opposed to really aggressive, trying to keep someone on some really stringent schedule. It's more like to try to avoid, art farm sort of things where money is locked up for years and years.
Roberta, is there some built-in limit for time periods for non-city projects?
Yes. Yes, they can only go under contract for 3 years, or city council approval is needed to extend a contract beyond 3 years.
So maybe then for the non-city ones, we don't need this special condition.
Perhaps, but it may be just for uniformity and clarity to.
Right, and we're not saying anything inconsistent with,
yeah,
the general language, which is, and it does make it more upfront, perhaps, than wherever the tiny print is where they would find that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right. And do you want to?
The only caveat, I'm sorry, before we leave that, is it sounds to me though, under that term, it's not CPC that has to approve it, it's City Council.
So this is saying that they'll come to the CPC before City Council, which I think is what has been done in the past anyway.
Okay.
That they would come to the CPC, request a contract extension, and then we put it on a council agenda to give them the contract extension. That's been done a few times before.
To approve, or yeah. All right, well, I don't feel the need to have too many conditions on this project, but I feel like they were very well prepared and they've have a terrific track record about getting things done. So I don't have the need to put much more in here. Anyone else have a suggestion? All right, shall we take a motion to approve the letter, the recommendations?
I'm sorry, just real quick, what were the other conditions that were in the language, the Art Farm letter, that just to see what we're not including? Because I know there were, I think, 3 in that letter, right?
CPA funds will only be used for CPA eligible expenses, and the City of Somerville will install a permanent sign noting CPA funding at the completion of the project. So the Elizabeth Peabody House already has a permanent sign, and this project, we didn't identify any ineligible expenses that we were concerned about them mixing with the project.
Okay, I mean, they still both seem like pretty good general language, but to have,
Okay.
again, it's whether you want to think about it on each one or just have that in there, and if it's applicable, it's applicable, and if it's not, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so motion to approve the letter, the recommendations?
So moved.
I'll
Seconded?
second.
Okay. Jahan,
Yes.
Rose,
Yep.
David,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
All right. The next project is the Somerville Museum. And just as a reminder, what you had discussed the last time was to commit $87,475, which covers the cost of collection care specialists and to restore the paintings, but does not cover the storage furniture that they requested funds for. So that's the amount that you might make a motion to recommend if you still feel the same way.
I have a question about that, since there's the 470 odd thousand that we don't know, so 460 odd thousand that we don't know if it's gonna subsequently be available to us. Can we make this award the way the 87,000 we were talking about now, and then if we decide we have more money to distribute, amend it, append it? Or is this the final decision?
Well, I think we're trying to kind of wrap up some things that we feel like we are able to kind of wrap up quickly. So if this is one where we think we're going to come back and maybe play with the number a little bit, we should maybe go on to another project that we feel we can kind of.
Well, right. I mean, I know that there was some sentiment about them having gotten lots of our money in the past. I also know that we funded what we thought was the highest priority work, but I also know that all that was in the context of us trying to divide up a small pie. So I don't.
Would just say, yeah. One thing though, I mean, it's the high priority, but I think it's also eligible. We talked about eligible uses and ineligible uses, and I think it's I think what I remember is landing on this 87. That is sort of taking the storage furniture doesn't seem it doesn't sort of hit the category of eligible uses the same way as the other costs do.
Yeah, and if that was also, I thank you for reminding me. I didn't remember explicitly. I remember us talking about whether the staff were eligible, and then we decided they were. I didn't remember storage furniture as whether they were eligible or not.
Well, do people feel that we're gonna need time to revisit this number, or that this is a good number to vote on?
If this includes all of the eligible, then I'm fine with that.
Well, there's more because their overall request was for 196, so they had a number of other things that they would like us to consider. awarding, but we sort of cherry picked the 87K.
And was that above and beyond? You mean the storage furniture that Rose is reminding
They
us?
had the Bullfinch stairs, and they have other items that they would like to get to at the end of the day, but we prioritized the restoring of the paintings that were in particularly bad shape, and the collection care specialist to train the staff.
My inclination would be to hold this.
Let's
We
hold
might
this for a moment. Yeah.
want to go more. We also potentially might want to go less. This, for example, was based on the assumption about doing no money now for Cross Street.
Yeah. So I might suggest that we jump down to
Mud Flat Studio is the next one
yeah,
on the list for which we have a consensus. So
and
for
we
Mud
may
Flat
have
Studio,
consensus on the
you were,
0 for 90 Union, but let's go to Mud Flat first. Easier. All right, go ahead, Roberta.
so your recommendation for, or what you had discussed last time for Mud Flat Studio was to fund the full request at $15,000.
So I'm still in support of that, and if the rest of the committee is, maybe someone can make a motion to approve.
I can make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. Dick,
Yes.
Rose,
Yeah.
Laura,
Yes.
me too. So passes unanimously. And we
I
have
will
2
find
conditions
those.
already in the draft letter, the historic
Yeah.
district and the preservation restriction. And then the 2 that we were just talking about as being kind of boilerplate type conditions that we can put into things. The 3-year and the CPA eligible expenses. So with that, to me, it looks like the letter's pretty complete. Does anyone have any other edits or recommendations for this recommendation letter? Okay, maybe I can have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, Dick
Yes.
and Jahan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself as well. So with that, Mudflat
All
is
right.
approved.
Blessing of the Bay is the next project for which you had a consensus the last time, and that was to fund the full request of $250,000.
For the Mystic River Blessings of the Bay.
Yes.
I still support that recommendation. If there's anybody else on the committee with questions about that? All right, maybe we can have a motion to approve the 250 for Myra.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, and second,
I'll second.
Dick,
Yes.
Jahan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself as well. And so then the funding conditions, we can add those 2 boilerplate conditions that we've been Yep.
in light gray on the, sorry, I can't get this to go away. I never figured out how to make these things go away. I'm gonna try. There we go. So in light gray is a condition that I put in the draft that I've had differing opinions about whether it's advisable or necessary to have such a condition, that whether the area to be converted from the roadway to expand the area of the park be permanently dedicated as open space. I've had different experts give me differing opinions over whether this is advisable or necessary as a condition. And if committee members, I think that I would go along with whatever the committee's comfort level was about whether to include a condition that basically what's happening is that in order to create the path, an area of roadway is being converted into park to accommodate the path. And should that area of roadway be permanently dedicated as open space, or continue to allow the flexibility in case any time in the future that be the city want to put it back into the roadway for some reason or another.
Do you know what the process is for them to do that? Is that an Article 91 conversion or
Yes,
something?
so if it's, yeah, Article 91 or 97.
Oh, maybe it's not, yeah.
Yeah, so two
We
ways
approved-
that land can be
that we
permanently
approved by-
dedicated as open space is through a conservation restriction or through designating it under Article 97, I believe it is. And if it's dedicated under Article 97, it's an act of state legislature to change the designation back to remove it from open space.
So I kind of like that, although I don't know that we can word it. I don't know we can declare that they shall do it, but I think we can tell them that they should pursue it. You know, because it's ultimately up to the state legislature, I think, whether they'll approve it, right?
I think that I'm not sure what I think that it's just the city council can designate it.
And then I think
it's
the legislature
the
needs to approve undoing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Right.
Okay.
And so the downside of doing this is that you're hog tying.
If they ever want to put it back into roadway or any other use, that little sliver, they would have to go to the state legislature to undo the restriction.
How big an area are we talking about?
We're talking about a half an acre over a half a mile.
But the area that's coming from the road is a strip that's, like 4 feet.
It's just
or something.
Yeah, it's a sliver. So I mean that half an acre is a half a mile long.
But it's like some sliver along each edge of that. The entire length.
Yeah. Just one edge.
And what's this? And the status of the rest of the space is it already is open space.
Yes.
It's open space.
Yes. So they're expanding the park by a few feet.
The existing trail is too narrow, and it has like utility poles in it and signs in the middle of it, and it's not truly accessible. So by being able to reroute the path and claim some of this roadway space, they're able to widen it and make it more multi-recreational.
Is there a way where they don't want, for some reason, to convert it back to road, that they have room on the other side to? No, because the other side would all be already open space, right? So
the other side's residential.
It's
Yeah,
residential.
one side is residential and one side is park. And so we're going to expand the park by a few feet for the whole length of the pass to accommodate a wider pass. And the argument in favor of permanently dedicating it as open space is to make it clear that we're creating new open space with this, that this is not just improving a sidewalk, but this is the creation of open space to make a path.
But it's
And
not.
I think the owner of the road is not the city, but maybe Mass Highway.
I think the owner of the road is, well, the owner of the area that's being rededicated to open space is the city.
Is the city's? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I sort of like the statement. I feel like there's always the temptation to nibble away at parkland for vehicles, and the fact that we've reclaimed some into the park, it doesn't hurt to ask them to, we could take David's suggestion and say pursue if we don't want to be overly
But as Roberta points out, if only the city approval is doing it. I don't know if do you have a sense that the city wants to and would do this, or would this just going to sit in their docket forever?
No, I think it's all been worked out because they had an earlier grant that got thwarted by this property ownership issue, and now it's all worked out between them and the city.
I'm just trying to figure out, depending on how we word it, well, what happens if it doesn't, like what's the, where's the what if, sort of, right now it's just a statement. Whether we say will be, will be permanently, I mean, obviously we can't say will be permanently dedicated because we don't have the authority to do it. So it's not done by this letter or by our grant award. It's a question of, and then if it turns out they don't do it, well, then what? So I'm trying to figure out. But all this is kind of a little bit beside the point. I do like the idea of us doing it. I think it should be done formally, and I've been involved in issues where it was hugely important, that it had open space designation, and and the city had to go to the legislature to try and undo it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I like it. I think it's just a question of figuring out how far can we go in this, in stating it, or how do we state it in this condition?
If I change the word will to may, it's much softer, but it's still a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I think it should be, shall pursue or something, permanent conversion of this land to open space. Because using the word shall as opposed to may is a directive from us. And if they don't do it, presumably we can do something about it. It's just not entirely clear to me what we would do about it. In a way, it's kind of similar to the private property one. It's like, what do? We take the money back,
Permanent dedication of the area. Da, da, da.
I think shall be is better than will be, because again, it's not, we're directing them to do it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve this recommendation?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay.
Lots of seconds.
Dick?
Yes.
Shahan?
Yes.
Rose, you seconded. Laura?
Yes.
And myself as well. All
All right,
right.
so the next project, then it motion passes unanimously. The next project on the list that you had a consensus about was Junction Park, and you were in favor of fully funding the request at $400,000.
I believe this recommendation still stands. Does the committee agree?
Mhm.
Okay, can I
Yes.
have a motion to approve 400,000 for Junction Park?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, Dick,
Yes.
Jahan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself as well. All right. So we had a draft condition about the posting of the sign and our new sort of boilerplate.
Yeah, let me find an example that requires a sign be posted. That would be at Mud Flat.
Okay.
Sorry. We didn't put a requirement for a sign in Mud Flat. So I don't know if I have the wording in any of these, but actually there was a wording in the original art farm.
Yeah. I thought you did put the sign. I thought you did add the sign to the.
Not to Mud Flat, but we'll
So
make
too
them put a
late for us
sign
to
up
go do that?
anyway. What's that?
Too late. Is it too late to put that into Mud Flat?
I still can.
Yeah, why
We
not?
can vote to amend the letter.
Yeah. You can vote to amend the letter.
Yeah, so let's finish up this one and then go back to Mud Flat.
Okay.
Okay, so Henry Hansen.
No, this was, we haven't finished. This is Junction Park right now.
Oh, Junction. Oh, sorry. Oops.
And so you just recommended the $400,000 and now you need to approve the letter.
So I have no changes to make to this letter. If the committee agrees, can I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And all right, Jahan,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
myself as well. So that's approved.
Okay, let me open up Mud Flat Studio again for you.
Yeah. So I move to reconsider our decision in Mud Flat Studio in order to be able to add a requirement of the posting of a sign.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jahan,
Yes.
Rose.
Yep.
David,
Yes.
myself as well.
All right. That is added. Then the next is Henry Hansen Park. So you had agreed on fully funding the request at $350,000.
Okay.
I have to admit, this project really gives me some heartburn. It's just so much money for what it seems like the city is getting. I mean, it's the city asking for it. And I know I talked about it last time. And I just am curious about other people's thoughts about, because this is right. This was 400,000 towards a design. And I think that they also said that they have, I forget, a park grant or a block grant for some other portion, again, just for design, if I am remembering correctly. And maybe it's not our
I
place.
don't think it was the design. I think it was the construction.
I didn't think so. I thought it was just design.
No, the design is completed. This is for construction.
I think it was 50,000 for the design, and this is construction.
Okay, I want to look at that again because that's not how I remember it.
Hmm.
And let me, before we go any farther, just note for the record, as I have, that my son-in-law is a landscape architect who has the contract for this project. And so I have done a formal disclosure with the city in writing and gotten approval from the city solicitor that this does not constitute a conflict of interest for me. I might abstain anyway, except that, as we know, putting the budget together, money from one thing comes out of another. And so they're not independent from each other. And therefore I will vote on it.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, Dick. I guess I personally, I understand that it's a small little pocket park with a high construction price tag, but it's had a lot of they have leveraged the park grant, and they've they have a concerned citizenry group involved, and I think we should stand by. Personally, I recommend standing by our recommendation to fund it for $350.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Dick,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and myself as well. So then looking at the conditions, let's see if the recommendation letter is all we want it to be.
I just added the same conditions that were in Junction Park.
Okay. I think it looks good to me.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation letter.
Can I have a second? Okay. Dick,
Yes.
Jahan,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself as well.
All
All
right.
right.
So the next project on the table is 217 Somerville Ave. As you had discussed previously, this is a project that you had thought about hinging on the Art Farm recommendation, but you may still just want to consider fully funding it without hinging it on Art Farm, or keep this one on the table if you want to resolve the Art Farm question first.
Yeah, so I think now we get into kind of the position where we have 217 as an open space project, and then we have the three preservation projects we haven't voted on yet: the Somerville Museum, the Adams Lagoon, and the 90 Union Square. 90 Union Square we had down for 0, thinking that they could apply in the next cycle. Perhaps if we still feel that way, perhaps we could vote on that, and then we would be dealing with 3 projects that we're sort of juggling in the final awarding.
So do you want to take a vote to decline recommending this project this funding round?
Yes. Does anyone want to make a motion for that?
So moved.
Any
Second.
Okay.
I'll second. Thank you.
Rose,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Okay. And is there an associated recommendation letter that we need to look at for that?
No. I think we can just, we're not going to send the city council anything with respect to that, so we don't
Okay.
need to.
All right. Adams Magoon, do you want to give us any updates on?
I did when you were out.
Oh,
So the
sorry.
Adams Magoon House, that's all right. We picked the biggest question first while you left the room.
Okay.
The legal department has asked us to put this one on hold for at least another month while we sort out whether we can resolve the whether it's possible to give this grant without being inconsistent with the anti-aid amendment to the state constitution. So the anti-aid amendment prohibits city or state money from being used to benefit individuals or organizations that do not obtain a specific public purpose in response. And so I think the legal department is exploring ways whether it's possible for us to structure the grant. Even as a loan, it may still be a concern. So they're looking to see if there's a way that it can be structured so that we can consider this funding recommendation.
Wow, that would have big impacts on whether or not private individuals could get preservation grants.
Yes, it would.
Mm.
And it's this is, I think, part of the reason why this is coming so late in the game is because we literally just brought on board a new head of the legal department, chief city solicitor, like 2 weeks ago. So we've been awaiting making any major policy choices like this for a new person to be in charge. Well, we have interims who are helping us with legal matters in the meantime. So I think that she's just now having the chance to look at this issue. And so we're going to need to give some more time for them to consider this before we're able to make a decision.
So it doesn't apply towards Elizabeth Peabody House, for example, because they have service programs that are available to the public.
That's my understanding, but I am not going to try too hard to interpret the legal language myself.
Okay.
Mm.
So that's almost $500,000 that is kind of on hold until we know the legal ins and outs of how we can, what the tools are for awarding this to a private homeowner. And that leaves us then with trying to balance out what we want to give to Somerville Museum and Grace Baptist and 217 Somerville Ave.
And just to be clear, so applying, I'd like to just for now take out the Art Farm decision because I'm not sure that we're ready to make that decision. But applying the available funds, we have 474,000 remaining that could be added back in. So that would cover, this is the updated request from Grace Baptist Church. So without taking money out of any of the other projects, we could technically be able to add the 425,000. I'm just going to block that in so that we see how that affects the overall budget. So that brings us to within almost exactly $50,000 of the available funds. making, as Dick pointed out earlier, that was making the somewhat arbitrary decision to reserve and hold $750,000 of the undesignated fund balance for whatever purposes it's needed.
Roberta, could you just go through what is now in and what's not? I think I've lost some of the thread.
So this figure, right now, the only thing that is out is what we agreed, 90 Union Square. And everything else, it includes Grace Baptist, the Somerville Museum at 87,000, the full funding for the Adams Magoon House, and the other projects, and the funding for 217 Somerville Ave.
And it leaves us still with a balance of 50,000.
50,000, yeah.
And it includes the 217 Somerville, but doesn't do anything with Art Farm.
Correct. No change on Art Farm.
And it leaves a balance of $800,000.
Yes. It leaves a balance. Where are you seeing a balance of $800,000?
Well, we had 750 that we set aside, and this leaves another 50,000 on
Yes.
top of that.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
I get this exercise, and I think it's really helpful, but I do feel like we have a lot to talk about with Grace Baptist, and so don't want to jump to this, an allocation of that.
Yeah.
Right. But it does mean that if we decide to do all of these, we have enough money to do it, but we're not in a situation of taking money from Peter to pay Paul in order to make things work. We could fund every one of these things and have enough money and not be able to touch the 750,000 and have another 50,000 to add into that.
That's correct. My suggestion would be, and I mean, I don't want to, at the prerogative of the chair, would be to complete any that you feel that you can come to an easy consensus to tonight, and resume the discussion next month for the remaining ones.
Roberta, I was actually thinking along those lines. I think it might be helpful if we turn, like the ones that we voted on tonight, maybe turn the text to black or something, and then the ones that we have voted on, keep them red, or update the figures, or and then it's really visual.
So I guess I'll go down to 217 Somerville Avenue, which is one of the open space projects. I think part of the feeling was that there was that PSEF had monies for these fields at Dilboy and for the Kennedy School and for the art farm that were sort of just being held out there because they didn't have the capacity to move all of those projects along at the same time. And so then here's a new project that's kind of at the beginning of the pipeline. This is 100K for design, and just the question of, do they have the capacity and pipeline to actually do it? Should we be awarding it this round or not? And that's where my hesitation has been on that particular project. So I kind of feel like from our art farm discussion that we were beginning to feel like that the 1 million, no matter how it was bonded, but that the 1 million from the CPC funds had been in their pro forma for a long time now, and that it would be complex to extract it at this point and make them reapply, although we haven't, totally decided that, but that was, it seemed to be that things were sort of leaning towards not tinkering too much with the art farm commitment. And that would leave us then with the question of whether or not we wanted to award more money for a design project when they have several projects that haven't moved. We have the money, and we know that open space is one of those things that people really want us to spend money on, and we don't always have the ability to fully fund all the open space stuff.
So I think those are all good observations and things we definitely we're talking about. Two things that I think changes my thinking on it right now is, one, we now have a more definite idea of where Art Farm is and when it'll be there. And I don't, so I think that so we know they're not going to do anything with that until 2025, probably at the earliest. So I don't know that, so it's not like we're going to be trying to use other projects to leverage getting them to do that sooner. That's not going to happen. And the other thing is, I felt like to some extent they were using us as kind of a piggy bank to kind of put money aside and lock it up in a way that, where they didn't have the same, where they didn't have to meet spending commitments, that the city council would impose, and I think that this funding condition language we've been adding kind of addresses a lot of my concern about that. It's like, they'll have to do it in, with 3 years or be coming back to us as to why they're not, as opposed to, being able to just kind of continue to kick down the road while they're doing other higher priority work for them.
Well, my impression is that they do a pretty good job of keeping projects moving along, getting things into the pipeline, pushing them through, getting matching funds where they can. And I learned a bunch from the Art Farm presentation, and it was not sort of my impression that they just haven't prioritized it, that it really gotten tied up in all of this other stuff that go into that project. And so that made me feel better about whether they're just holding on to money and sitting on it until they get around to it, or whether they are moving the things that they can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the 100,000 for the project?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, okay. I'll second it.
Okay. All right, Jahan?
Yes.
Rose?
Yeah.
Laura?
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I'll vote yes as well. So this one it's a design phase, so they can't really, I guess they could post a project saying it was CPA funded process or something.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Completely contradicting what I said before, Heather, this is one where I don't know if I want to give them 3 years to start the design.
Yeah. Seems overly generous.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if we want to change, if maybe we have two boilerplate versions, one for planning, funding, and one for construction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do like boilerplate.
Well, we know it takes a long time for them to actually get their grant. So shall we say 2 years?
I forget, were they looking for a matching grant? I thought they said that the 100K was enough to do
No, from when we approve it and send on our recommendation to it, making it way through the city's solicitor to.
The city's process is not as long as it is for the nonprofits.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
A year,
shortcuts.
I'm worried that a year is too short, though.
Yeah. Well, what if we say has? I don't know if we can say, you know, must be completed within 2 years.
Must be initiated is what we're saying here. So
Right,
it can be
right. And I was
initiated
saying,
within one year.
yeah, initiated in 1 year, like Rose says, seems short. Initiating in 2 years seems too long. You know, so
Yeah.
Well, I
that's why
would give an example. I mean, hopefully we don't see another pandemic, but projects that were scheduled to start in 2020 often did not start in 2020. So
well, there's nothing here that keeps us from granting an extension.
that's true. You can grant the extension if it's warranted.
So let's say one, because my concern's been that we award these design monies and then they go.
And we're just saying initiated.
Yeah.
So within they're initiating design. That seems reasonable. That means maybe they've gone out to bid. You know, they've gone out to bid for a design.
They've hired a designer.
Or hired a designer. Yeah. So, yeah. What do we mean by initiated? Hired a designer, have a contract.
Have a contract, I think that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true. I've seen plenty of things go out to bid and not go anywhere.
That's another cause for delay, actually.
If we're doing this for design here, were there any other design projects that we dealt with earlier?
Mudflat Studio.
Mm-hmm.
We can revise them, amend them again.
The work in progress.
Yeah, I would probably, unfortunately, reluctantly, I would kind of say maybe we should, you know, amend it again. I don't know that. I mean, I think they were kind of in a hurry, though, right? I mean, I feel like they had some. I feel like they had something they needed to do the work.
Yeah, I think they had someone lined up and they were ready to go.
And so
And as
I
a
don't know.
nonprofit,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that as a nonprofit, I would be worried about putting a 1-year restriction on them.
Then let's just leave it. Let's leave it the way it is. They're the exception that proves the rule.
I think this will send a message.
Yeah.
I think so.
So, shall we vote on approving this recommendation for 217?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Are we you're gonna ask them to post a CPA sign?
Typically, I haven't done that for design projects. So
Because they'll have a public process thing up on the park and.
Okay. I could say CPA.
And public outreach or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we want to wait till we see the plan.
All right. So, Rose, does your motion to approve stand? Okay. And Laura, you second stands?
I second. Yep.
Dick?
Yes.
Jahan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And myself as well.
All right. So that leaves these 3 projects for which maybe you want to hold on for further discussion at the next meeting.
I think, yeah, so we have still to try to wrap up the meeting tonight, the approval of the minutes and other business.
We have up to 3 meetings to approve minutes. So if
It's
it,
only been 3 hours.
want to give you as much flexibility as is, we're all human.
Yeah. So is there anything, so in terms of being able to make a decision on these items, we know we can't make a decision on Adams Magoon tonight because we're waiting for more information from the legal department.
Yeah.
Are we able to make a decision on one of the other two? It seemed to me that people were pretty comfortable with the Somerville Museum recommendation, whether or not we had more money. But we can table that and
I
go
was
at it.
somebody who asked that we hold it, but now that we've been through all of the numbers and we know that we can do this without taking money away from anything else, I would be ready to go ahead with this if other people are.
That we what?
So we now know that there's enough money to fund everything should we choose to do that. And so money on this account would not come from another project. So
Right.
given that, I would be ready to act on it tonight if other people
I
are.
think the reason, Dick, you had suggested holding off on this was to look at did we look at funding this to the full extent, everything, the 196,990 less the amount of the storage furniture? I think that was the piece that was sort of still on the table, and I feel like that we
Okay,
need
sorry, I
to.
did not realize that.
Okay, so am I hearing that it would be a longer discussion than we have time for this evening, and that we will table the museum, Great Baptist, and Adams Magoon till our next meeting? Okay. All right, then I suggest, Roberta, you pick the agenda items that are most important to you in terms of keeping the committee
Yep.
moving.
Sure, thank you. Let's hold off on the minutes until the next meeting so we can take them both at the same time, and it will be more efficient that way. But in the meantime, I wanted to take a quick look at the calendar so that we see what we have coming up at the next meeting. So the CPC calendar is in the folder for the annual review within your meeting packet. And we have in the next meeting to discuss kind of the overview of the whole annual review, so that we decide what the application cycle, public hearing format, and engagement strategy, kind of decide how we're going to go about the annual review process. And importantly, we're going to discuss who is going to be invited to the public hearing. Do we want to continue having the long public hearings that we've had, or find a way of reducing or breaking it up into maybe 2 meetings or something? So we'll talk about what our strategy is going to be for that. And then we also are going to review the application process. So I will put together a draft application instructions and forms, and we can talk about whether to make any edits to this. And when you've approved the application and application instructions, I can then make those available to the public so that they have more time to be able to fill out those materials and get in touch with me than they had last year when we released them in June. So, and then we also have scheduled a winter market tabling event on March 11th. And so next meeting, we can talk about who can volunteer to be at that tabling event. And I'm also going to schedule some library tabling events, but we'll talk about those at the next meeting. So that just gives kind of what the next steps are going to be, and the public hearing will be scheduled for March. So it will be important for us at our next meeting to decide what the agenda will be for the public hearings so that we can get that advertised right away. I think that's all you need to know for the next couple of months, and you can look at this calendar at your leisure and get an overview of what's ahead for the whole year. And that's part of what will be up for discussion next month, whether we want to move some things around on the agenda calendar.
Okay.
That's all that I have.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you everyone for your time tonight. Jahan,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and myself as well. Thank you, Roberta. Excellent work as always. And it just, we'll keep on trying to crack this nut about this year's grant allocations.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Mm.